Hello, it's the show with Ron, and this is a place where we add context and commentary to the news headlines. Sometimes the news headlines are just the facts, sometimes they're just clickbait to get you really interested in things. But when we understand what's behind it, kind of some of the history, some of the context of it, sometimes we're even more agitated. But the intent of this really is so we can understand what's really going on, not what we're being fed by the media, and maybe relax and calm down a bit, feel some separation from the news. Now, I've been really going through it with my channel because I've been trying to get some traction. I think I give some interesting and unique perspective on the news without going too in depth. It's a quick little bite-sized thing that you can have every morning and maybe calm you down because you understand what's really going on. So I've been trying to get some of my videos promoted on YouTube, YouTube being owned by Google. But all of my videos come back saying they're rejected because it's an election advertisement. So apparently, because if I mention a story that has the President of the United States in it, it's partisan political advertisement. Apparently, YouTube and Google, they're quite protective of the president. So one of these days, I'm going to try to do one of these headline context shows like this and not mention Biden or Trump, any of the candidates, and then try to get that promoted. But it's got to be a really good video that will attract people into the channel. But anyway, that's not today, obviously, because we've got some political stories here that, well, we just can't escape. Oh, so before that, let's talk about the deficit. The big mainstream media usually doesn't cover the deficit that much. It's kind of downplayed. When it is, you mainly hear about crazy far-right Republicans in Congress daring to say the stopping the spending bill, because they have this thing where they've got to approve spending every once in a while. These were brakes that were put on Congress in the 90s that would supposed to shame Congress into not wanting to approve spending again and again. The intent, these spending limits, the intent was to make Congress say, yes, we are going to spend all of this amount of money again, essentially. And it would shame them. I'm trying to conceptualize this because these spending breaks that were put on Congress have evolved to a point where in the media they are portrayed, anyone who would vote against this spending, who would stop the Social Security, whatever, is considered a crazy radical person. And anyone who would call for not more and more trillions and trillions of spending every year. And it really is the case that a lot of these people are far right crazy people, but it's come to the point where the mainstream Republicans, the mainstream Democrats, they don't want the spending to stop. And we went from under $1 trillion national debt at the end of Clinton's presidency. And Clinton balanced the budget. And he did a lot of the things the Republicans said they were going to do, like him or hate him. But now we're at the point where we're like $33 or $34 trillion national debt, and we have an exploding, yearly debt. Now we were at, I know we were at 1 trillion not too long ago. I guess we're at 1.6 trillion, and it's going to be jumping up to 2.6 trillion by 2034. And again, if you're a congressperson and you try to stop the spending, you're you're a right-wing crazy person, and these people are right-wing crazy people, but they're the only people who are raising the red flag. And Axios is supposedly a left-leaning internet news platform, but they have put this out, and this is a danger. And it's both the Republicans and the Democrats who did this. George W. Bush, a lot of the big foreign wars, they did a lot of tricky stuff in their budgets to make sure there was not a normal recession. We did have the real estate crisis in 2008, 2009. Nobody's not, well, there's always somebody who suspects that there's something crazy going on behind the scenes, like what happened with real estate. But most people didn't suspect anything was going to happen. And then both Obama administrations and the Trump administrations, and certainly the Biden administrations, adding huge amounts, trillions to the national debt every year, all in trying to prevent any kind of recession during their terms, essentially. Yeah, this is, of course, we won't have a recession this year because the economy is already set up. It's kind of gamed by the administration. The Fed has already said they're not going. They're reducing rates at certain times, so everybody has that plugged into them. Here's a right-leaning publication, New York Post. We have anti-Israel protesters shut down Fifth Avenue. Of course, they would play that up. It shows how the young progressive left is splitting with the administration in power. And Biden calls Trump existential threat. That's certainly, whether you agree with it or not, that's certainly a fair comment based on a lot of stuff Trump has said, based on a lot of Trump supporters who have said Trump went too easy on his opponents, the people who were trying to stop his agenda during his first term, and he needs to get tougher. A lot of thoughts about how he might do things differently when or if he is elected again. So this is an article that, if you really think Trump is an existential threat, and we also see how young progressives are diverging away from Biden, that makes a Biden re-election a tricky prospect. There's probably going to be a lot of leaning on these court cases to say, could they somehow get Trump off the ballots enough that they can defeat him that way. Democrats, could Taylor Swift tilt Florida blue? Democrats' wildest dream. I would think it's a big mistake for any pop star to get engaged in politics like this. American politics, president's term is 4 years, maybe 8 years, then they've disappeared, gone with the wind. George W. Bush, remember, it was such a big critical thing to get rid of him or to support him. All that seems ancient history, as do the Obama administration. See, I can't even think of his name. What a big deal that was. Oh, we're congratulating ourselves. He's a black guy as president, and he's going to do all these things. And we still had foreign wars. They invaded Libya. It kind of led to, I think, some disillusionment. Many of his economic team from all the same big banks as George W. Bush's were. Probably that led into the disaffected vote for Trump eventually. Of course, when I was a kid, our big celebrity was Michael Jackson. So what can I say? Scary stuff about AI. Acting like a dictator in these nuke simulations. I mean, I don't have a lot of faith that the U.S. can do things the right way with its technology and nukes. So then imagine a country like China or Russia even have a less likelihood that they're going to be reasonable in how they use technology in the future. That is scary. Here's stuff about keeping Trump off the ballot and defenses Trump might use in these cases. You know, it's always hard to second guess this. Everybody does. There's all the channels that do, and it's very fun to do this as well. But you can never guess these verdicts right because you're never there to understand all the evidence that's presented or the legal way that it's being interpreted. So I think it's a fool's errand to do that. What else do we have here? The media had fun accusing the kid of blackface, but it's both. It face painted these colors for a sports situation, and I think if I'm a white guy, I would not paint any of my face black. I would not want to have to sort out the situation afterwards, even if I'm totally innocent. And you know, the impetus behind that is the internet clout, how these news organizations that really aren't news organization, they were talking about Deadspin, did that. These are online websites that are peddling news, probably going to use AI as much as possible. They're under a lot of pressure to get the clicks, to get the views, so you don't want to give them anything. You don't want to give them anything that they will be tempted to use, perhaps dishonestly. First time in 2 decades, U.S. buys more from Mexico than China. It's probably the way it should be. China should be gearing itself up to be the new China for the United States, right there near us. China's facing all these kind of problems where while they're sort of closing themselves off from the world, they have this demographic bomb of the aging population. The prosperity that many people thought that China was going to have doesn't seem like it's possible now. And in the midst of that, there's the saber rattling towards Taiwan, and the thought, certainly from the Chinese leadership, that this may be the only time that they will be economically stable enough to grab back Taiwan, stake their claim in the South China Seas. It's a dangerous time there. King Charles, homeopathic medicine. Homeopathic medicine, that's something for dummies. That's like having no medicine at all. That's all I'll say about that. Newsom in California signs bill making HIV prevention meds available without prescription. Anybody who lives, works, has been outside the United States in a lot of little countries where you don't have this prescription racket. I understand why you got to have that for drugs that could be misused, for antibiotics, that sort of thing. But wow, you really need to allow people to have life-saving, life-changing medicines without prescription more often. In general, I know there's a lot of caveats to that. I know that's sort of a bland generalization to say that, but I think in general, the U.S. system is really messed up. Stuff about the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday. And what else do we have here? We have Nikki Haley lost the Nevada primary. Guess she didn't campaign there. the Republicans basically decided on Trump as their nominee, but still people wrote in none of the above, and she was beaten by that. This just points out how the primaries are run, designed by the political parties, not the government. This is why this year the Iowa caucuses, the Democrats didn't have them as the first primary like the Republicans did. They're going to have them, I believe, in the beginning of March on, I think, one of the Super Tuesdays. And that's because the Iowa primaries can be gamed by an outsider candidate, and they were afraid perhaps someone would see Biden's weaknesses, his apparent senility, his weakness with progressives, young people, and the state of the economy, which, despite what you read in the big media, a lot of people still think when they see inflations in their foodstuffs, when they go to the stores, when they see the stats that homelessness is at an all-time high, most people can't afford the rent, and people will blame the administration in power, despite the mainstream media telling people that, oh, everything's great. You're mistaken. It's the vibe economy. You don't realize how great things are. But the political parties have to deal in reality, even if the media is trying to manage people's expectations. Airlines, an airline will now weigh people as well as their carry-on luggage. That seems fair enough, doesn't it? Why should a skinny person pay the same for all of their carry-on and luggage as a big person? We are responsible for ourselves, after all. I don't think I can show these. This. Here's Kanye and this girlfriend person, and they're upset, but that she's being taken advantage of by being made a giant celebrity. But she's 29 years old. It seems to me that when you're that age, you can do what you want. And, she's probably making a lot of money on social media. And I'm not sure all that stuff she's doing is really good fashion, though, but it makes people follow her, I'm sure. What else do we have here? Terrorized by gangs. Ecuador embraces hardline Noboa way. And I've always mentioned this before, when the society breaks down like this, when there's law and disorder, it doesn't create left-wing revolution. It usually creates hardline, more fascist-leaning dictatorships to restore order. And we see the same thing that's happening up in El Salvador now with their election of their hardline leader, who is going to restore order. Promises to. And inside UFO cults, sex slaves, clone babies. I know I can't scroll down because there's some naked bodies here, but again, this is one of the reasons that governments would pause in revealing the world that we really live in, where there are probably, most likely, alien civilizations, then that we are in contact with them. If they revealed that, people are stupid and they would start worshiping them and they would be embarrassing the human race. And of course, then the real reason along with that is that what if one of our enemies, what if a China or Russia or North Korea or Iran, maybe they make a side deal with people who have extreme technologies, and then instantly we're put at a disadvantage. these are reasons why a government and governments would try to keep all of this stuff a secret. But of course, in the last few years, I think maybe this happened during the Trump administration, and I don't know if there was a purpose for it. The U.S. government has changed their policy and has been openly acknowledging that there is technology out there that we don't understand and we can't communicate with or control. You know, those Tic Tac videos, that is a sea change in policy, because there's always been a lot of suspicion, and even government people in past decades who've come forward to say that there are UFOs, but the government and media cooperated and said, oh no, it's just mass hysteria or swamp gas, or these people are crazy, and they gave no credence to it. Now, in the last few years, we're living in a different time where the government has acknowledged the reality of things perhaps beyond everyday science. Here is my novel. Young people find their dreams and failures in Bangkok, and then go on to the furthest places in search of something the modern world can no longer give. This is the story of There Are Still Unknown Places, my new novel on sale at Asia Books and on Kindle ebook. It's a tale for a new generation, disillusioned by the promises of the world, wanting to search for their destinies in far-off places. Yeah, my book embodies a lot of ideas and concept and context about society and culture, about the way people are, the way people are becoming, the way people may feel overwhelmed by the news, overwhelmed by the changing world, and they have a desire to go out to find themselves in unknown places. And I almost forgot, my show is now on Odyssey for some reason, I don't know why, and now it's also on Rumble. And right away I noticed with Rumble I got a lot more views than I usually ever get for my tiny little site. But it's going to catch on. The only cool thing about Rumble is they will automatically sync with your YouTube site and upload everything that you have on YouTube, which is kind of cool. And finally, every day we have, what am I doing here? We look at an Art of War card, and this is some wisdom from a Chinese guy from over a millennia ago, and we see if we can apply this idea to our personal or business life. And today we have reverse goals from guest to host strategy. Step by step, gain authority in an organization that requested your assistance. Basis, incremental gains in authority provide a subtle means to assume control of a host from within. Oh, wow. I always pick these off the deck of cards without looking at them. But this is a wild one. I mean, I could see right away this is what you hear about people talking about, SJWs, the social justice warriors, that seem to have written a lot and in Hollywood in the past, maybe since 2016 or so, a lot of content that has been written and controlled to advance certain social agendas. And many people accuse of people like that of insinuating themselves into Hollywood. I think this was on the back of the idea that Marvel movies or comic book movies were always going to be the biggest thing in the world, and thus we can put in stories to advance agendas about what women should be or what women are. And I think there's been a handful of good material that's come out of that, but even not judging on the content of it or the message, the message of it, it's amazing how many very, very poor and by the numbers material has come out of of that creative process, especially, after the Marvel Endgame, whatever the latest stage in the last couple years, all the Marvel films, boy, they just turned terrible. They turned from some of the greatest entertaining films of all time to just dreck. But anyway, that's the headlines for today. And I will see you next time. Tune in to me on YouTube or Rumble or Odyssey for more context and commentary, because this year's going to be super interesting because we've got security situations around the world, countries taking advantage of America's divided state, perhaps anticipating a new president who is not going to be engaged in the world. I mean, Trump in the future, and we have the election itself, and so many people who are banking they have to have Biden in, and they cannot have Trump in for many different reasons. So it's more important than ever not to get caught up in the worry and concern. So tune in here, and we'll talk about these issues and see what's really behind the news. Bye-bye.